I think when we talk about the welfare argument, I think what we're looking at is I like the FEI's position. So the FEI's position is a good life for horses. And then World Horse Welfare is the other big voice in this conversation that I sort of tend to follow. World Horse Welfare are somewhat unique in the horse welfare advocacy space because they're really the only one with primarily a utilitarian approach to welfare. So rather than saying we can't do it, their concept is a net good life. And so you put the FEI principle of a good life together, you put the World Horse Welfare definition, and it's this concept of a net good life. And that's an acceptance that we will, in our management of a domesticated species, in this case horses, impose things upon them that at the time have potentially negative effects, but the overarching goal is a net good life. And so I would take your example of the aged horse as being a really good one, is that, we've got George out in the paddock. He's 19. Our goal is to provide him with a net good quality of life. When we warm him up, he's a little bit stiff. Okay, that's a sign. We say stiff because it's a nice way of saying that he's not in pain. It's the same, right? But the same thing is, 5 minutes later, we put George in front of a show jump and his ears go forward and he's like, baby, let's rock and roll. And you put him on a cross country course and he's 10 foot tall and bulletproof and he really enjoys doing the work that he does. And so we have to balance that in an aged horse and say, is what we ask him, that is that level of discomfort he experiences during warm up balanced by the joy that he experiences during competition? And I think personally, as long as we're achieving that net good life, we're headed in the right direction. But we need to be able to communicate that. And I think critically, we as horse people inherently believe that the horses enjoy doing what they're doing. And, I ride my horse that likes cows. They love cows. They get down and they go, hey, come on, we're going to play. They do it in the paddock by themselves. They play games. My polocross horses play polocross in the paddock by themselves. They do all the ducking and weaving. I look at, some of our horses that love jumping, and they love jumping. Like they're like little kids jumping up and down on the spot. I want to jump, I want to jump. But we have to be able to communicate that. We have to be able to show that to the broader audience that we're not just using these horses, that we're collaborating with these horses for a net good life. And I think that's the biggest goal because we don't have very effective tools for doing that. Equally, I think we have to be willing to challenge a lot of what we do as not okay. And I think there are a lot of practices that are done for traditional reasons that if we were to sit there and critically evaluate them from outside, they're probably not okay. And they're not contributing. They're either an unnecessary negative imposition or they're not balanced by a suitable positive, net quality life. And you can pick a discipline and you can have that conversation in any discipline, and that's very dangerous territory. But I think I would take dressage as an example. I think if we look at my favorite horse at the Olympics was a horse called, what was his name? It was a British horse. I've forgotten his name now. But anyway, he came out. He was the one that came in as the emergency, and they were never meant to be there. And they came out. Becky was the lady that rode him, was her name, and they came out, and this horse was just like, yay! I'm having so much fun. It was like, it was having a ball. It had a crowd. It was playing up to the crowd, and it got 55%. The next horse came out, was cranked down, tight, facial ears, got 77% because it was more technically correct. That's where I think we've got to start that conversation. We've got to say, and that's picking on one discipline, but I think we've got to ask those questions across all of our disciplines and be willing to say stuff that we did 5, 10, or 20 years ago is not okay anymore, but we can find a balance for it. And then the conversation around medication is part of that conversation. But we've got to be able to communicate to people why we're doing that, how we're doing that responsibly, because the challenge with medications is that there's that immediate perception of, well, you're forcing a horse to do something it doesn't want to do. But also, we know, unfortunately, there is a sub element of all of our disciplines that the moment you give them an inch, they'll take a mile when it comes to medication control. And so sometimes it's easier just to say no than to say, well, yeah, but.